Once again, greetings viewers. Happy to back with you all. This is Raman from Novello Advisors. To reiterate, as part of justidt.org initiative, we are here to share our thoughts and inputs on tax decisions which we think would be relevant to you. Having said that, this is episode 2 of Conversations with Novello. As a part of this, we are going to be looking at one of, it's almost weird, close to funny, but not really funny. The fact that the revenue department, the revenue authorities are asking India Inc. to pay GST on, hold your breath, the very act of holding equity in a subsidiary company. To those of you to whom it might come as a surprise, there are show cause notices, and the matter has in fact reached the Karnataka High Court in Bangalore, and the High Court has been kind enough, graceful enough to give a stay on the matter at this point of time. Let's look at what it is all about. What is the concept of holding equity in a subsidiary company? A subsidiary company, for the very act of its existence, needs to have capital. The capital is received in the form of giving equity to the holding company. And many of the MNCs in India act on that premise, act on that basis. Being a subsidiary technically means there would be a holding company. And the holding company in fact would be called a holding company only when it has equity stake in the subsidiary. This very whole approach is sought to be taxed under GST by revenue authorities. So let us look at what equity is at the end of the day. It is basically held as a part of securities. And therefore, because at the end of the day, if we look at it, securities in terms of Companies Act include shares, scrips, debentures, etc. as a part of their definition. And therefore, I don't think there can be any confusion to say that equity is part of securities. Is securities included under GST? GST is basically a levy on supply of goods and or services. If we look at the definition of what supply of goods are or of that of services are, it clearly excludes money and securities. Technically keeping money and securities as a part outside the ambit of GST. In essence, GST cannot be levied on any transaction in relation to money, in relation to security as well. Now, let us look at it a step further. When we say that there is no GST levy on transaction in money, easier to understand when we talk about money per se rather than securities. So if I'm going to go to a bank, opt for a loan, I get a loan of, let us say, about 5 crores. There is no GST on 5 crores. The banks may charge me a processing fee towards processing the loan or towards processing my application, documentation for the purpose of taking a call whether a loan should be given to me or not. That processing fee is subjected to a GST. That is not a transaction in money. That is to facilitate a transaction in money. Similarly, in the GST ecosystem, it is also nobody's contention that any facilitation fee or transaction fee in the form of giving an equity to a holding company. If at all, if such a transaction fee or facilitation fee is charged, nobody's contention that it should not be subjected to GST. That should be very well subjected to GST. But what the GST authorities are currently doing right now is that because there is a space in the scheme of classification of services, a service of holding equity in a subsidiary company, using that classification as a core fulcrum, they are trying to levy a GST on the very act of holding an equity in the subsidiary company. Whether it is controlling interest or whether it is not a controlling interest, all that is immaterial in the GST ecosystem. The fundamental issue, does the revenue authorities have even a reasonable amount of interpretation to start this initiative? It's not exactly a good initiative, but initiative nevertheless. Therefore, it is also reasonable to say that while a transaction in securities should be subjected to GST, the very securities cannot be subjected to GST. It is totally a different matter, and I find it amazing to see the valuation methodology which the department has adopted, profit after tax. 5%, which is in terms of the bond value. EPS. I mean, like where does it stop? At the end of the day, GST is meant to make India Inc. to be given with a sense of ease of doing business in India. Such initiatives, however, with a good mind it might be, does not take away the fact. It just puts in a lot of confusions in the minds of India Inc. as to what is going to be the consistent principle on what are the liabilities on which GST is payable. Not everybody frankly can afford to go to the High Court. Not everybody frankly can afford to take this as a part of a challenge, and there are authorities who are saying it's available to you as a credit, therefore why don't you pay? That cannot be the yardstick, please. And therefore one has to go back and see if there is any value as a part of a show cause notice or any proceedings as regards a holding interest in the form of an equity in a subsidiary company by the holding company, whether the GST department, whether the revenue department is putting this under a forward charge in case of a transaction between two Indian companies in India, or under reverse charge mechanism in case if the holding company is abroad and the subsidiaries in India is totally unfair. And of course, we are aware, while cases are pending before the Karnataka High Court, while equivalent representation has been made before the CBIC, we are of the very strong opinion that this is not a matter which is even open to interpretation, and therefore the sooner we get a closure on the matter, better it is. Once again, thank you viewers for the patient hearing, and we would definitely love your comments, and as always, do check us out at novelloadvisors.com. Thank you all.